Well, you might say lightning has indeed struck California this week. Well, I'm talking politically, of course. Although the reality is, if you've been in Northern and Southern California, you are supposed to take cover because there's a big storm a coming. But welcome to California Free Radio. As always, we are blasting live on X, as they call it, at Netter Mike, at taxfighter.com, on LinkedIn in various groups, on the Rebuild California Facebook groups, and on our YouTube channel, Outraged. Look, everybody out there, first off, I'm going to check in with my co host because, gentlemen, it's been quite a week. Scott Piotr and Kurt English, of all the things going on this week, I want you to name one, and then I'm going to ramble on about it that you consider to have been an earthquake, if you will, to California that's bringing down political buildings. Kurt, let's start with you.
Newsom's chief of staff is in a big bunch of trouble, and there are some whispers that Newsom that goes to the top, and Newsom is also going to be in trouble.
Well, you know what, Kurt? In 1 second, I'm going to turn that whisper to a scream, as the song goes. Scott, what would you say this week has been one of the biggest political earthquakes that we've seen?
Well, obviously, we had Prop 50, and we had the results of Prop 50. Very, very disappointing, but not unexpected. I think that one of the things that we still now are clinging to in our hope is the lawsuits that are being filed. And one in particular, the Department of Justice decided that they want to join in on it. I believe you're a plaintiff on it, Michael.
I actually am, which is a perfect lead into my opening rant. But tonight, everybody, as we start with an opening rant, I also want to stress there's a lot of gold in them there hills. And by a lot of gold in them there hills, look, I'm kind of part of the press more than kind of. When I talk to the reporters, I do radio, I do all kinds of things. And let's face it, eyeballs are attracted by negativity. Although I've been surprised, gentlemen, that my possum post got over 750,000 views. I put it in Entertainment News this morning. So animals and negativity, shall we say, attracts a lot of eyeballs. But the reality is there are lots of good people who are fighting for California, and we don't get enough airtime. And we're going to introduce our guest in a couple minutes who's changing all that. But I want to start with my usual opening rant. What the hell? And that's only the best way to describe what's really going on with both the mainstream press and, frankly, the way that they reported Dana Williamson. Scott, you may put up a picture of her. No comments, please. Who is Newsom's former chief of staff, who just got indicted for embezzling. It's another polite word for it. I'm not going to use it. Money. And this story goes a little bit deeper. She embezzled it from Becerra's campaign. But this woman you see sitting beside Gavin Newsom right there has kind of a long political history. And I want to take a second to understand. Architect of Prop 1. That was the mental health thing that Newsom put on the ballot. She has been one of the people who's negotiated with the unions. She is actually the person who negotiated the fast food wage law. And I'll leave that
behind
for
closed
another
doors
punchline.
after signing an
Wow.
NDA.
When you get out and pay $25 for a hamburger, you can really blame it on her. She negotiated with the union, so that got signed. She may have something to do with our billion-dollar Capitol building, but of course we don't know that because why would we as taxpayers? The reality is 2 of her co-defendants have already flipped. And I read the indictment last night, and I will be posting the entire indictment probably tomorrow morning. Or a quick plug, I'm on 870 with Jen Horn at about 7:30 tomorrow morning. Make sure to tune in. If you're not up that early, set your damn alarm. Get out, get a job. But let's put that down for a second. This Dana, who Gavin released from office, or she resigned about a year ago, was already under investigation. And before we go, it's a political witch hunt. That was the Biden administration. And they really were trying to chase down, as documented a year ago, wasn't a big story. No one knew who Dana Williamson was. They were trying to chase down Gavin Newsom. And while trying to chase down Gavin Newsom, even Biden's Justice Department found, shall we say, some really bad stuff. And for those of you that don't understand it, I want to simplify this for you. We're going to go into this later in the show, but let me simplify it. Becerra, who was originally appointed as Attorney General, because Kamala Harris went on to Washington, then Becerra went on to Washington and left a campaign account. Dana Williamson then went in with another of her co-conspirators, who, by the way, before I forget, Dana used to work for a role producer for PG.
Hello.
PG&E.
What?
Yes,
PG&E?
used to work for the electric company. So the fire you see behind Scott right there, many which have been caused admittedly by PG&E, she is probably, allegedly, the connection between Gavin Newsom and all those utility company donations. We'll get back to that. She started billing Becerra's campaign because nobody was watching, because Becerra wasn't campaigning, for a no-show job. Wait a minute. That's actually, isn't it, Scott and Kurt, what Gavin Newsom's
I
job
was going
is?
to say, it sounds like a lot of politicians' jobs, Mike.
But this case, it was literally wire fraud and all kinds of things, and her and her co-conspirators are looking at about 20 years in prison. That's big story number one, causing that lightning bolt in California politics. Of course, it got released on the same day the Epstein files, blah, 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 and the same day that Congress voted to reopen our government, which, of course, it made a big difference to you guys. Didn't the last couple of weeks government being closed?
Not a bit.
Wait a minute. Government's been closed?
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly my point.
Dang it, I missed it. You telling me it's back open?
I think it is.
Shut it down forever.
Yet.
My mail's beginning delivered anyway with bills, and it's still Prop 50 material, which is another big story that we broke this week. The inequities within Republican consultants. Katie Grimes wrote about it. That was in Netter News this morning. Literally so much I can't even cover it in opening blast today. And again, it's like the third baseman. I'll pay you $30 million a year as long as you can hit. Our party hasn't done a real good job at that. And along the lines of Prop 50, indeed, as Scott more than alluded to, I'm one of the 19 plaintiffs that we are suing with the Republican Party on our side, the state of California, because I strongly believe this is racial gerrymandering the way they drew the maps. We'll be talking about more in other weeks. Harmeet Dillon and Pam Bondi have agreed to join our lawsuit as plaintiffs today, meaning this is what Trump is referring to, is that the federal government is joining our lawsuit. Now, this is relatively complex. I will get into this after we have our guest, but understand the fabric is Louisiana is already being sued in the Supreme Court's about to make a decision for racial gerrymandering. So before anybody starts to say you can't overturn an election, this isn't about overturning an election. This is about maybe, just maybe, okay, probably, Gavin Newsom and his cronies with crayons that they probably got from one of the public schools, because they certainly don't use the funding for education, probably drew these lines illegally. So we don't want to give false hope here, but I will tell you, and I can't tell you who's backing this lawsuit, but I will let you know that Pam Bondi, Harmeet Dillon, through the Donald Trump Department of Justice, today announced they are joining us in the lawsuit as plaintiffs, and the state of California has brought in heavy armor because originally we started suing Gavin Newsom and friends in the state, and the court ruled yesterday with no opposition. Both sides are probably going to need a lot more ammo. Now, I don't know how this is going to turn out, but you know what, Scott and Kurt?
What?
It's kind of like one of those series you watch. It's going to be a lot of fun over the next couple months to watch Gavin Newsom squirm. And I can guarantee you that even with all the sedation that Gavin Newsom takes, he probably wasn't sleeping real well last night between the Wilkerson scandal. By the way, it was fun to see my buddy Ashley Zavada sticking a mic in their face. And between this lawsuit, oh, wait a second. Gavin wasn't sleeping. He's down. And where is he at?
Brazil.
guys down in Brazil where he flew in a private jet so he could be part of the climate exchange. Of course, I will say the government of California probably works just a little bit better when Gavin isn't there.
No, wait a second. That's the climate exchange where they bulldozed hundreds of acres of rainforest to put in a road for this conference, right?
To
We're
go
talking
to
about
the
the
climate
Absolutely. And Gavin flew a
change
private jet.
conference.
Yeah, climate change is not for me, it's for you. Come on. Got to do your part.
And I
Well,
want to
and
be
they
very
flew in on
clear.
private jets.
Of
Big
course they
carbon
did.
footprint
And
for
they're
those
in
hypocrites.
big hotels consuming lots of
I'm
electricity.
I'm sure that he planted 100 trees to compensate for that private jet flight.
I'm sure he didn't.
You got someone else to do it. I'm sorry. You were saying, well, wait a minute. Do you want to bring the guest on? Our
Well, I'm
guest?
gonna
Do you want
bring
to
the
talk
guest on
about
in
our
a
guest?
second. Everybody out there, as I talk about in the mainstream, and let's face it, when you open the papers, as we used to call it in the morning, or go to the internet, if you saw at the top of your feed or the front page, interview with a great person, you probably wouldn't immediately read that. You want to read about a
Read
good
what?
scandal or a good this, that, and the other. But the guest we're bringing on tonight, who is producing State of Gold, is doing an amazing job with a new vodcast, films. I'll let him explain it. To take the California conservatives, where it's hard for us to get airtime, unless you're expletive deleted like me and demand it, what they need to get their message out. Now bring on our guest, John. Where is he? We lost him. John, how you doing?
Hey, gentlemen, boy, I was having just a great time in the green room, appreciating the opening and, your assessment of the state of affairs from last week. So great to be here, guys.
John Slavet, it's great to have you. Tell our audience who may not be as familiar with you as we are. First off, let's start with who you are, what you're doing, and the question I ask all our guests, why the hell are you doing it?
Yeah, who, what, and why. That's good. I'll start with the who. I'm John Slavid, a 30-year resident of California. Boy, things have changed. Grew up back east and followed my dreams to work in media and technology and came to California to work for the founders of Wired Magazine initially, which was a long time ago. That was in the 90s. And, went from there. I've been a founder and CEO of a few companies from very small to very big based out of California. So I come at this from a private sector as an entrepreneur and an executive. And, over the years, my experience is that California has been declining for a long time now, year after year after year. And I've been complaining about it to my circle of friends year after year after year. And, not just my kids and my wife, my friend said, well, why don't you actually do something to contribute to positive change in California? So I said, you know what, I'm going to do that. So I left my last company where I was the CEO of a company called Central, which is one of the leading, really innovative real estate players that offers flexible living to people who travel from city to city. So I left that and started getting into media. And for the last 6 months or so, I've been traveling the state of California, talking to professors and electeds and Democrats and Republicans and anyone who's got a great idea to turn California around, because we're in a ditch. And I think, my experience with all of these travels and conversations has both depressed me and inspired me. The depressing part is all of the metrics where California is at the bottom of the barrel. The exciting part is that it's all a man-made problem. We are suffering from terrible leadership. We're suffering from terrible policy. And what's downstream from those two things is bad outcomes. And our working poor, working class, and middle class people can't afford to breathe the air here. And our businesses are leaving. But the great news is we can turn it around. So, I'm traveling the state. I'm talking to people. Mike, we'll talk soon about the lawsuit that you're a part of, and hopefully we can reverse the gerrymandered maps. We put out a great 9-minute mini documentary, which you helped us promote. We called it The Big Rig. We actually had a semi truck driving down.
I'm going to stop you for 1 second.
Yes.
I reached out to John because I saw this, and You have to watch it. Thank you, by the way, for putting a very uncomplicated name that even somebody with an IQ like myself that's lower than half my body temperature can remember. The Big Rig. And I
Yeah.
promoted on my X channel, and I'm going to do it again because even though Prop 50 allegedly has already gone through, you have to watch this. Back to you, John.
Thank you so much. I'll just say a couple more words, and we can chat about wherever we want to take this. But Prop 50 is it's a power grab. It's anti-democratic. It was a great opportunity for Newsom to raise $120 million, what I read, from 100,000 donors all across the country, allegedly to preserve democracy. But, my view on that subject is that gerrymandering, when the majority party bludgeons the minority party out of existence, it's bad wherever it happens because it's anti-democratic and it takes us down a very dark road as a nation. So that's what we're doing. We're sourcing and promoting the best ideas to turn California around. That's what State of Gold is all about. And I'm excited to be with you guys.
I want to break in before I even let my host and I'm doing as I'm doing. Where, by the way, thank you again. The sharing team, we're pushing this out all over the internet. Jump in on a couple points that you made because I've been making this throughout my appearances to begin with Prop 50. I'm first shocked by something that you just said. You mean California's crises are man-made? I thought it was climate change, but I guess we used to call it weather. I'm an older guy, but now of course we call it climate change, but we'll put that down for another show. You said something very important, which is actually covered a little bit in The Big Rig. For anybody out there, and many of you know me because I started the Recall of Gavin, and we work on the propositions, like with Susan Shelley. We'll be showing for Save Prop 13 with the Howard Jarvis Group. We'll be showing a clip from that in 1 second. But when you do an initiative, either on the government side or a side like me, there is no cap to the amount of money you can raise. Let me say it again very slowly for those of you out there going, huh? I'll do it again. I'll go, huh? No, let me do the other part again. Is that when you run for governor, I believe the limited donation you could take is $32,500. When Scott Piata ran for state assembly, what was your limit, Scott?
It was pretty high. I mean, the individual campaign contribution limit though was $5,400.
$5,400. So hold on. Understand by Gavin doing this Prop 50, and I really want to stress this point, John, because that's another reason people really need to watch The Big Rig and watch many of these interviews. And again, I'm a simple man, so I'm going to simplify it for everybody out there. Gavin Newsom, because the press, I get it, we talk about, look how much money Gavin raised. He was able to take in $1 million of one donation from Netflix. Again, another $1 million from the Resniks. Can you say the people that own the water and the almonds in California from the Forever Company? And he could take in that money without limits. Now, John, this is another interesting follow-up. I'd like to give you an idea of our future episode. Put me in the tiny credits in the end. Is that State of Gold maybe could talk about how much money did Gavin spend and how much does he have left over? Because during the recall where Gavin raised 90 million, little old me and Orrin, he spent 70 million. I'm not physically with these guys, so they can't beat me. But the 20 million he had left over, he formed his Save Democracy PAC with. And so he's going to take that leftover money. He doesn't really give a damn about this, that, and the other, and take that leftover money and promote his brand. In theory, he can't use it for federal office, but that's a critical takeaway I want you to take for the beginning of this show. John, tell us about the people that you interview before we show the clip, and how do you pick the people that interview? Obviously, you have class and taste because I haven't been on yet, but tell me how you pick these other folks. I'm going to keep rubbing that in.
Oh, we'll class it up with you, Mike, soon. So listen, it's been interesting. I've had a great co-founder on State of Gold named Mason Harrison, who spent 20 years in Republican politics and seems to know everyone, and everyone still likes him, which I'm told is a miracle, just in politics in general. So in the beginning, first guest was a connection, David Crane, governed for California, was a budget director advisor with Schwarzenegger, one of the leading experts on the California state budget, Stanford lecturer. And we got to him through some mutual connections, but then it kind of rolled from there. we had Willie Brown, which was an interesting interview. And, I want to get both Dems and Republicans. Willie, 92, don't agree with his politics, most of it, but still going strong, still cogent. That was the interview where he came out and he said that he didn't think Kamala Harris was an executive and she should have stuck with the law, which broke a lot of news, kind of went international. And a week later, she dropped out, not because of my podcast, but it was just great timing.
Come on, John, take credit. Welcome to our show. We need all the credit we can get. It was very simply because of John's podcast. That's the only, they showed it to Camilla. We actually have that on a secret film. We'll show next week. Back to you.
Yeah. That'd be we missed the October surprise. That would have been great for last month. And now what's happened is we're getting a lot of inbound people. A ton of inbound. And we have all the candidates for governor wanting to be on. So I'm going to put out an interview with Ethan Penner shortly, the independent candidate. And I've already put out one with Steve Hilton, and I put out one with Chad Bianco. So we've had a mix of people. Dan Schnur, who's a professor at 100 different institutions, interesting guy. Radical moderate is the way he described himself. And so it's been a mix of Elizabeth Barkahana, the Republican activist. So it's activists, it's electeds, it's professors. I'm trying to talk to people who've got the best ideas to turn California around and instigate interesting conversation. We're getting great, and about 90,000 unique viewers a month on YouTube, which is our primary channel.
And by the way, one of the things that I thought was interesting about, he is. He's on fire. And I want to stress, too, before we even show this clip with Susan Shelley. So let's talk about governor. And again, this is my show, and we're really blunt. Not that I really get to it with, but the FCC can't regulate me. Is that when people run for governor, for example, there's Class A, Class B, and Class Who, if you will, right? And the Class Who is always vying for something. Class B gets a little time. Class A gets certain time. That's known throughout politics, running for Congress or whatever. What I find most fascinating about what you're doing is some of the names you mentioned, not only the old guard like Willie, who still looks pretty good for 90. I'm going to ask, by the way, I need to ask a question. And again, we only have about 10, 20,000 people watching. What does Willie eat? Because he looks, I want to be like Willie when I get old, man. Not necessarily politically wise, but the dude looks pretty good for how old is he now?
92, I think. I went to his office in the Embarcadero Center in San Francisco, and he's just on the mezzanine level. You walk in. He's got this big desk in the corner, just like he had his mayor. It may be his mayoral desk from City Hall, but there's this huge desk in this big open room. He looks great. He's dressed to the nines like usual. But, I asked him at the beginning of the interview, what is your secret? How are you doing this at 92? And he said, he got philosophical, and he said, do not allow anything negative to come into your mind or your body. That was his advice.
He allowed Kamala.
I was waiting for somebody to throw it out there, but we'll put that in. So one of the things, my point being, that you put on political voices or advocates, okay? And I want to, how many people you've had come to your YouTube channel?
Well, we've had about 700,000.
Okay, so I want to put this in perspective for everybody. Because again, I talk about the millions of views I get each week, and 700,000 for most people out there is about, it's about 2 weeks of viewership on CNN. Okay, cumulative. All right.
It's probably 2 months of MSNBC though.
The four of us on the show are 2 months of MSNBC. We have a van parked out front with the rest of their viewers. So the names that you hear much of the time that you're used to, John, you get what I'm going. You and I have talked about this before, because we were brought up with, 100 million people watch the Super Bowl. Great. What the hell does that mean? We're not the Super Bowl. And you got to look at the number of people that watch an individual show. That's a lot of people. And so political advocates and voices that you're putting on, who we lay our posteriors, as we say, on the line every day. We want to thank you for giving us a voice. We're going to roll a clip now with Susan Shelley, and for everyone out there, when you look at Netter News, which I know you do because it's free and all of you have that kind of money, even in California, okay, you will see that we push Save Prop 13 has a live petition out there. Susan is also on KBC like I have been, and she is the driving force behind the Howard Jarvis Group. And I want to stress, roll this clip. Scott, what's your handle? Tax Fighter, right?
Tax Fighter 7.
Tax Fighter 7. And John, I'm going to ask you a question. Kirk, I've already asked this many a time. In all your travels, even when you talk to Willie Brown, does anybody that you know, do they go, man, I got to be honest with you, I wish I was paying more taxes. I look at how much I'm paying every month and I go, that's not enough. I'm underserved in California. Who can I write to so I can give the government more money? That's nobody. And so when we look around, we're not cognizant.
Not even the Democrats? Come on.
Even the Democrats.
Oh, they want to
Seriously.
volunteer our money to pay,
They want
not
our
theirs.
money.
Our
Certainly they do. Okay.
Yeah, gotcha.
But the reality is, Save Prop 13, that petition, which is out right now, is they've been chewing away at the basis of 13. Scott, if you could roll the clip right now, I'm going to go off screen for 1 second, do a little more tech stuff. John, your mission
John, do you
right
want to
now-
introduce this clip?
Well, when he does, before he does, John's a producer. He's a really intelligent guy, but I got to tell you, you're going to have to act really ecstatic and happy when you watch your own clip because I want to see a little bit of enthusiasm. Okay, go ahead.
So do you want to introduce it?
I'd be happy to. This Susan Shelley is just a fantastic journalist. Obviously, a big part of the Howard Jarvis Tax Foundation. And this clip, I believe, actually is about her commenting on why California housing supply is limited, and specifically where.
Okay, it's only about 48 seconds, so hang in there. Let's see if we can't make her clip a little bit bigger here. All right.
People don't realize that there are restrictions in California on where you can build housing. You can't go beyond the urban boundary because supposedly driving to work is bad for the climate. Now, if you believe that driving to work in California is affecting the global climate, I have a bridge to sell you because this is not doing anything. So even if you think that climate change is hideously dangerous and all our fault, what California is doing is ineffective. And everyone will admit that if you press them. And here's what they say: California must show leadership. How much should we be paying to lead China, to lead India? How much should California residents not be able to buy a house, not be able to drive their cars, pay more for food? How much more should we pay in California to show leadership to the rest of the world, which is paying no attention? People realize that there are restrictions in California on where you.
We won't play it over again.
Yep. That's Susan. She is cogent and puts it in context. She puts it in context, and I think the right way.
Yeah, and no, I know, and again, because I'm a simple man, and as everybody who watches every week go, I'm probably a little bit touched. I know people say that their parents dropped them as a kid. I think mine's accidentally slammed me down or purposely slammed me down. That's a story for another day. I'll cover that in therapy next week. The soundbite really that Susan could talk deep on. And John, this is what I like about your segments. Okay, they're actually relatively about the right length. When you get to be my age, it's hard to watch an hour's worth. They're about 28 minutes.
Yep.
And they really get to the core of the matter. And I love Susan Shelley, and I tell this to Susan, I tell this to many of the people that you have on, sometimes that the issue gets too complicated for the average voter. Susan has a really good way of boiling it down when you talk about housing supply as a big one, right? John, I'm still a little bit, and by the way, I do read Wired magazine. I meant to say that early for you that aren't nerdy like me. Wired magazine, which is now online, is basically when you want to find out the newest and coolest thing in tech, or if you're like me, how come the computer isn't working? Have you tried the on button or plugging it in? Wired Magazine is a really good way to go. So that's actually kudos to you. I'd forgotten about that. But how do you find your guests, or how do you, I know you found, we were at the convention with me and you found other people, but how did you get set up with Willie Brown, for example? Did you go, I mean, did you hang around his office? Did you jump out of the bushes? Did you see if Camilla still had his number? Did you go by the doctor or something and wait for him for you to buy eventually? How did that develop?
You know, actually, there are a couple restaurants that are his haunts, and if you hung out one of those restaurants, you would inevitably run into him. But you know, my team had a connection to him, and we just put a message in, and I think his team looked at our site and saw that we had interviewed a range of high quality people, and they said, "Hey, you should just do it." And his one condition was he doesn't do remote. You have to come to him to be face to face, which I kind of appreciated. So we brought our 3-camera setup. You know, modern cameras are amazing. They're, you know, they're color corrective, noise correcting, and there are 3 of them that follow. There's a 2-shot and an individual shot of each myself and guest.
Around, right.
And you roll. And so that was Willie. But otherwise, you know, we've got a list, we've got a pipeline of people that we're targeting, and what the conversations I want to have are mostly policy conversations. Why is energy so expensive? Why is gas so expensive? What's up with our housing? So I spent a decade in real estate, both commercial and multifamily. So I know a lot about housing. Why is the economy in the state that it is in California? Why is our unemployment 30% higher than the national average? On and on. So, and then issue based. Prop 50. We did a whole series of episodes on Prop 50. We did a mini documentary. We did that because it was so important. So we'll do those special series now and again too.
Kirk, go ahead. I'm going to give you a chance to ask a question of John here, because I got lots.
So, when you recently met with Willie Brown, did he have anything to say about Kamala Harris today? Like, is she running for governor next year? Is she running for president in 2028?
Well, I haven't talked to him since we were with him a few months ago. He was very, he chuckled, right? He has this chuckle, this kind of knowing chuckle that he does. And he said, listen, people are going to get mad at me for saying this. And she thought she should stay with the law. He said he thought she should. So he told the story of when she was on the short list for VP. He gave her some advice about what he thought she should do. And of course, she didn't take his advice. But I've not talked to him since. I mean, it's pretty clear after her having ducked out of the race for governor in California, she wants to keep herself free for 2028.
Yeah,
John?
in other words, out of office and it has been. Well, at least Willie Brown was, kind of open and honest with you regarding, I guess it's kind of like at 92. What do you have to lose, right? What the heck?
That's what I said. I mean, he's he wants to stay relevant. I mean, everyone does, right? And he's cogent, and he put it out there.
I think that's one of the differences that we see, and I want to spend too much time focusing on Willie Brown, because I know many of you out there, even though you're in our age range, you're going, who? Because that sounds kind of funny, but he's not in there. But Willie Brown, I would say, and John, I want you to agree or disagree honestly with me on this. I think that the older Democrats, you can call them whatever you want, right, believed in what they were doing, okay? I'm struggling right now because it literally is like South Park, Saturday Night Live, Doonesbury, to believe that Gavin Newsom even believes what's coming out of his mouth, and many of these other folks when you hear them talk, because I want to get to issues, but do you agree or disagree with that? Or
I thought you were going to have him stop talking about Willie Brown. Oh, never mind. Go ahead.
no, well, I mean, in general, I mean, Willie actually, I think believed in what he was doing.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying? And
I agree.
I'm looking at the people running the state today, running the state, and this isn't every Democrat. This is the small group of people running the Democratic Party.
Mhm.
I'm struggling to believe that even Kamala Harris looks in the mirror and goes, "That was a great speech." I mean,
Well, I mean, my view. I had Kevin Dalton on recently. You know, who's a
I love Kevin. Yes, he's a buddy of mine.
Yeah,
We
and I
know
know
that.
you guys.
Mr. Anti-Newsom, right?
Yeah, I mean, he, you know, of course, he's doing it from Idaho. God bless him. You know, so he's evacuated, but he still loves California.
He's an
And, you know,
expat.
he's gonna try to help the rest of us from Idaho. But you know what he said, which I tend to agree with, is most people, including politicians, are not evil. They're not evil. But what I would say for the small cabal of Democrats,
There are exceptions to that, right?
I'm not saying there aren't exceptions, but for the most
Okay.
part, people aren't evil. And I have to tell you, whether it's Joe Patterson or David Tangipaw or some of the legislators in the assembly I've interviewed, you know, whether it's behind the scenes or live on camera, they've said, listen, I don't think my Democratic colleagues are evil. I don't. They've said that. But what is true is there is an addiction to power. There is trying to keep your seat safe. There is trying to not be primaried by special interests, meaning public sector unions, which are very powerful. They're the ones who are buying, selling, and trading our elected officials. And then I think there's ideology. And I think that there are smart people who are captive to dumb ideologies or wrong-headed ideologies. You know, Scott Wiener is a great example where he's got some good ideas, and then there are other ideas that are unethical and immoral. And so I
Which
think
would be about 90% of his ideas.
And John, I want to be honest, our show doesn't have time to cover all his ethical and immoral ideas, so let's put that down.
we can put it
Sorry
down.
to interrupt you again, but I've been ignoring our feed here. Yes, folks, we do see you on the chat. And thanks, Magdalena, and everything that's going on. I just want to acknowledge our people chiming in here because I forgot to do that. John, here's one of my questions for you, though, because this is my opinion on how the series is evolving, for lack of a better term. Okay, so you're doing State of Gold is about California, fair enough.
Yes.
Okay, and just by definition, you know, you interview a lot of Democrats in power because there's a lot more Democrats in power or have been in power. Okay. And you have the Republican side, you're interviewing people that have opinions or assemblymen or happen to be in power. But I'm interested in, to me, it's, and again, nobody strike me dead. I don't know that Gavin Newsom at his heart is evil, but I think he is surrounded, like as Dana Wilkerson, for example, by evil people, the staffers themselves, who take advantage of things. Do you give me your just feedback on that before you see what I'm saying? Is that a lot of times it's not the politician themselves. They're supposed to be supervising the store, right? They're the store manager, and 60 employees were caught hauling stereos out the back. Their kind of job is to watch the back and make the stereos don't get hauled off. Do you think they're surrounding themselves with bad choices? Or are they evil or stupid? Sometimes the net affects the same. Back to you.
Yeah, it's a good question. Listen, if again, we have we're a nation of laws. Rule of law is very important. These acts have been alleged with Williamson. If she's guilty of them with her co-conspirators, then they're criminals and they're going to go away. So we'll have to see, right? In terms of evil versus stupid, you know, I really look at the quality or the lack of quality of the policies and the ideas, because, you know, at the top I said that we're the victim of bad policies and bad ideas with bad outcomes in California. And I think, honestly, it's a combination of thirst for power, wrong-headed ideology, a sprinkle or two, maybe more of stupidity, and I think the echo chamber of that's become Soviet. And let me tell you what I mean when I say it's become Soviet. You know, my grandparents on my paternal side fled Ukraine, thank God, in the 1920s. and came through Ellis Island to Boston, where I grew up. And thank God they got out. My brother and I joke we'd be conscripts in the Russian army if
Mhm.
we hadn't. And so when I say that the Democratic Party in California has become Soviet, if you went into a grocery store or a bakery back in Soviet days, you'd have one kind of bread on the shelf that was extremely hard and stale, and that's what you got. And I think the Democratic Party is kind of like that stale bread. It's a bad recipe. It hasn't worked for a long, long time, but there's a machine in place to keep making that same kind of stale bread that no one wants. So is there some evil in it? Maybe. I tend to think it's really not about evil, but it's wrong-headed, it's bad ideology, it's power hungry, and it's an echo chamber. And we need to smash that into a million pieces on the ground and rebuild the leadership in Sacramento as soon as we can.
It's interesting the way that you phrase it. For a guy dressed in black, you're very polite. I look like I should be the cheery one.
This is navy blue, by the way.
Okay, well, assume my eyes are going, my hearing's going, my brain never functioned that well to begin with, but we'll talk about that another time. I think part of the problem is, Scott, could you text our guest back bugging our feed person who obviously wants John to be on a show there? I think part of the challenge is, I love that graphic. When Gavin Newsom
That's
took
good.
office, okay, and this is part of what the Wilkerson case is about. So the Wilkerson case, at the end of the day, and by the way, I've read the indictment. I'm going to go past alleged. 2 of our co-conspirators have gone plea deal, guilty.
Yep,
I mean, it's
sure.
pretty much, it's like, hey, how we doing was driving the truck. We got pictures of you. But it's over $250,000 or something. I mean, it's not like record-setting money, okay? And I mean, people like whatever. But I think the problem becomes, to your point, and this, again, I want to do your job for you, but give you an interesting show or question for it is, like when Gavin Newsom came into office, that's why I think what Susan Shelley is important. State budget is about $190 billion.
Correct.
With a B.
Under 200.
Right. It's grown now to a little about $310 billion with a B.
322.
Okay? Right. Obviously, our lives are all a lot better for it. Wait, they're not. So when you talk that much money, and the old biblical saying, tempt not thy weaker brother, and the pools get really big, and people could start to become corrupt with 250,000, $1 million at a time. I mean, this is going to be a shot. By the way, for everybody out there, I want to be perfectly clear. None of us are getting paid $250,000 for doing this show. Wait, we're not getting paid at all, for example, right? But when you start to slice off little chunks of money that become bigger and bigger chunks of money, leave the candy out for the kids to steal. I think I'm trying to be a little more polite as you, but a little less polite than you. I think you're breeding corruption. You're leaving money unsupervised when it grows that big. And it's interesting that the people that you interview, again, I don't know. I'm going to leave Scott Wiener out of this because I just think he's a bad apple. But a lot of these, I obviously met a lot of these Democrats. They're not bad people. I just don't know that they really understand that what they're doing isn't not only not working, but to the point of Soviet capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
And John, Scott, put up that graphic again, if you could.
That was a great one.
I want to boil this down because
Yeah.
I've been to Eastern Europe and East Germany, right? And I've been there after whatever. Here's what the part that's sinking. Great graphic. I get it. Bread. I got bread. You don't have bread. We go in. But the part that's really interesting is the bread production is about the same for both countries. The problem is in socialism, and this is what California starts leaning towards, is that the people along the lines producing the bread, getting it to deliver to the store, are taking the bread. Okay? It's not that the Soviet Union doesn't produce enough bread. It's that people are stealing the bread before it gets to the shelves. I mean, you can cut through it because they have a system where there's no checks and balances, because government doesn't have checks and balances. Their customers can't leave them. They can't go out of business, right? And so they create these, people are stealing the bread, in my opinion, before it gets to the shelves more and more. So they grow more wheat, which they call taxation, taking more of what we're working for. They make the pool bigger and bigger. I mean, you got to wonder, in less than 6 years, how the hell, again, we got the $1 billion building, the annex. And no, I mean, really, how did Gavin Newsom and his cronies manage to grow that budget by like $150 billion? I mean, give me some, Kurt, Scott, John, somebody help me out before I have a stroke here.
Well,
Yep.
I mean, I agree with you. I don't think that most people there are evil and by themselves. And you're right. I think they're kind of sold on that ideology that they can't get away from because the public sector unions control them. I ran for assembly last year in 24, and my opponent was Connie Petrie Norris, well funded. She spent a few bucks on surveys against me and realized she had it won by a lot. It was a plus 16 district for her. And, so she didn't spend any money on her campaign, put some signs up just to keep her volunteers happy. But you look at her contribution records, and she had over $1 million just before the primary. And of that million, there's probably 995,000 of it that were all from unions of one part or another. And it's a crack up the way they work. The pipe fitters union in Riverside gave money to her in Irvine. Well, what the heck are they giving money to, the Irvine guy? Well, probably because there's a $5,400 limit, and the Irvine plumbing guys gave money to the Riverside guy too. So they all just chipped in their $5,500 and they all got the money to their candidate in a roundabout but legal way to do it. And that's the system that, Connie Petrie Norris, I think, would be a blue dog Democrat by its, moderate terms, but they don't exist anymore because the unions push them into the corner. Like you say, they're afraid that they're going to get primaried. And I otherwise think that she's a pretty smart lady. She actually has private sector experience, which is unusual for most Democrats up there.
Yep.
All that being said, the Republicans are stupid, and they're never going to overtake them unless we do something to clean our own house. Prop 50 is a great example. Look at it. Look at the joke of a fiasco that we had with the separate entities running the opposition campaign for no on 50. They couldn't coordinate. None of them raised the money that they thought they were going to raise, and none of them were very effective. Although the consultants got rich off of it, again, as usual, right? But sorry about that. But the bottom line is that they're the evil party. We're the stupid party. Now I know you met with Jessica. You did an interview with Jessica Patterson, our former GOP head. You also did with Will O'Neill, our current Orange County GOP head.
I did Will. I've not done Jessica yet.
Oh, okay. I see the.
We had Roxanne Hogue, LA County GOP chair.
Right, one of my stars and good friends. I didn't think you had Jessica.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I look at Jessica. I look at Roxanne.
And Roxanne makes fun of that
so
because they get
like,
confused all the time.
She looks so much like Jessica. And in the thumbnail, I can tell the difference.
I don't think Jessica will be coming on your show after what we publish this week anytime soon.
So
I'm gonna
tell me, are you optimistic? I mean, we are all optimistic, or we wouldn't still be here. Tell me what you think about the California Party. Is it going to be capable of winning back our state?
That's a good question. When I engage with various people on the show, candidates, others, and I ask them the same question. If you listen to Carl DeMaio, it's a flaming disaster, and if you listen to others, it's a different story. So they're different opinions. I think that overall, I have great hope for Republicans in California in the medium term. I think that, again, if you look at voter registration, the numbers aren't huge, but you've got a vastly bigger number of new Republican registrants versus Democrats, which is like low single digits. Of course, the NPPs are about 1.1 million since February. That's by far the largest in California. But I think that
You're not counting dead people, though, right?
I am not. But
Trying not to.
if you talk, when I travel the state and I talk to friends in business, I got a lot of friends who have a D next to their registration who have had it there for a long time just because people are lazy. People don't
Yeah.
up and change their registration proactively that often unless there's like lightning strikes. I think there are a huge number of people. There's a silent majority, a coalition in the middle that wants something different and will vote for the platform or the person with the best ideas. And I believe that's going to come to California, hopefully soon.
So leads me in before we let you go, because I know we promised to get you off by about 11 o'clock tonight or something like that. Again, I'm an election stat guy, John. You and I have talked many a time, and the really biggest party in California is the party of apathy. I mean, let's cut through it. The Republicans actually, and I talked a little bit about this on some other radio and stuff, but here, so Democrats have about 46% share in the state. They don't have a majority,
Right.
okay? They punched slightly above their weight. In other words, voted more than their share in Prop 50. Got it? Leading up to my question here. Republicans have about a 26% share in the state. Okay? Really not as much less when you boil it down than the Democrats. Let's put that down. They actually punched above their weight. In other words, a higher percentage of Republicans turned out than the percentage of Republicans that were registered. However, the NPPs, what the heck's an MPP, Netter? Well, it's not a cracker. An MPP, no party preference, and everybody else, who to your point have a big share, punched below their weight. The party of apathy. They didn't give a damn. They didn't vote no. They didn't vote yes. They just didn't vote. They voted about a 13% share. Now, as you're wondering what this rambling old guy is leading up to, let me ask you a question. On the vast array of interviews that you've done, and I'm going to give you a limit of 3 because we've talked before, I'm a big believer in the law of 3s, okay? What would you say are the 3 things that would get people out to vote? Regardless, I'm tired of this Democrat-Republican stuff. People come out to vote if it affects their lives, okay? They really, most of them, everybody watching the show, God bless you. I keep telling you to bring other folks in. Give me the 3 issues that you think are really most important to Californians.
Yes. I love the question. One part of me wants to say, cost, affordability. That could fill up the 3 on its own and be the big one. I think that the issue of the air in California being too expensive to breathe, the issue of the cost of living here is kind of like the Christmas tree. And there are ornaments that hang off it, like how that affects the cost of housing, how that affects the cost of utilities, the cost of gas. So affordability is by far the biggest. I would say education is number 2. And listen, if someone comes forward and says, I can lower your costs and increase the abundance of housing, particularly single family in the suburbs, which is what the California dream is, that should get people out of their seats. But I'm going to make your life less expensive. Number 2 is education. Education has downstream effects in our whole society. And I think the level of corruption and lack of care in our K through 12 education system is shocking. And the vast majority of families have kids in public schools. So I think that's number 2. I would say number 3 is probably public safety. If you look at the crime stats and the way that they're cherry picked or quoted by the Democrats, it's getting better. But if you actually live in California, it's not getting better. If you actually live in neighborhoods, whether they're rich neighborhoods or poor neighborhoods, we have a lot of issues. So I think crime's number 3. The fact that Prop 50 passed by 70% and it's not been funded is probably the lead example of, government malfeasance in Sacramento. I'd say those are the big 3.
You mean Prop 36, right?
That's what I meant to say. Yes, Prop 36.
Okay. Hey, I want to fire back and do a John Slavitt. Answer these questions for me.
Yeah.
He's better looking than you are, but go ahead.
King for the day. What's the biggest thing you would do to fix California? These are things that John ends his interviews with. So I'm kind of putting the shoe on the other foot here.
Sign an executive order. If I were January 2027, I could sign that order to dismantle the cap and invest system. We can still protect our environment. We have all the laws on the books, but let's stop taxing our energy.
Yeah, cap and tax.
It's cap and tax. Yeah.
All right. So
Cap and trade.
Is there a California leader, past or present, that you most admire?
Well, I'm a huge fan of Ronald Reagan. Reagan is the most oft cited when I ask that question for obvious reasons. I think Hiram Johnson is interesting, a governor from a long time ago who really
started the initiative.
Started this issue, this idea of the initiative of allowing voters to rebel in a positive way when government's not serving them. So I'd say those two.
And the last one.
By the way, I'm sorry to jump in 1 second here, but this is really important because Hiram is one of my favorites too, and he was a liberal. And I'll expand upon that when I come on your show.
Classic liberal.
But he started it because a big entity named Standard Railroad had taken over too much of the air in the room, like we could say big entities have today. And so while the Democrats trying to fight things like the Gavin Newsom recall, which is an outgrowth of that, and the initiatives, hey, that's exactly there. He still has one left.
You mean the evil land barons? Okay, never mind. And the open-ended question that you like to ask: California is fill in the blank.
In the ditch, but filled with more promise than ever.
Have they stopped digging?
That's a good question.
I don't think they've stopped digging yet.
It's a good question.
Yeah, I know. I sit there, king for the day. I think, like you said, January, you get sworn in. I would abolish all government employee unions.
Yeah, that's of course that is. I don't believe in the sole purview of the governor. Of course, you'd have all kinds of litigation that would go on for years. But I agree. That's on the top list.
You said king for the day. I was assuming I didn't have to deal with the legislature.
Okay. That's true. That's true. King is king.
King is king. It's like, yeah, this is the one change I want to make. But you're right. It would be a lot more difficult legislation and legal and everything else. But it would have a great long-lasting effect on the state.
Indeed.
Get rid of a lot of evil.
Indeed.
John, before you go, will you tell us again how to find you, but what do you have in the can for the next month or so?
Oh my gosh, great. Yeah, so
And by the way, I'm referring to the film, not the restroom. Go ahead.
That was an important clarification, Mike.
I'm so glad you clarified that. Let's see. So stateofgold.com is our website. And if you type in State of Gold podcast on YouTube, you'll find us, or State of Gold in any place that you would listen to a podcast. What do we have coming? As I mentioned, we've got some more candidates for governor. We've got an interview coming out Tuesday with Don Wagner, who's a supervisor in Orange County. He's running for Secretary of State. His issue, of course, is voter ID, and it's a 5-minute mini episode, Mike. It just gets right to the point.
Excellent. That's Don, by the way.
That's Don Wagner.
Good guy.
It's Don Wagner.
Good guy.
Yeah, and we've got lots of other stuff coming out. I did an interview today with Lance Christensen of the California Policy Group.
It's for education, right?
Yeah, he ran for superintendent of public instruction 2022. Put on a great showing. He's super smart, super passionate. We're going to put that out soon. So it's a mix of good people.
And by the way, I want to stress, having known Lance a while and known all these people in the ecosphere, as we call it in the software. Again, John Slavitt is bringing them a voice to these people, and he's helping to amplify the voice. So I'm going to ask you, as I do all the time, Amplify the amplification, if you will, to use Wire Magazine. Give a boost to the sound which is already coming out of the speakers. State of Gold needs to be blasted all over everywhere. And for those of you that don't think your single repost matters, who doesn't think that not doing something on a Tuesday or Thursday night, moving something down the line by watching it, giving it you, or publicizing it, you're wrong. California can be turned back into a true state of gold if more people like John continue to do what they're doing and more people like you continue to publicize what John Slavitt is doing. Follow him at the real John Slavitt, because apparently there's a fake guy out there, and make sure you follow State of Gold on YouTube and do everything you can. Follow my feed once or twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. If I've had a good meal, I publicize what John does. John, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Keep up the good work, which
Thank
is
you,
only
guys.
going to get better because you're going to have me on soon.
Thank you. Yeah, indeed.
Thanks, John.
Okay,
Glad to
guys,
have you
thank
join
you
us.
so much.
Thank you, John.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
need
yeah.
We need more producers like him that put their blood, sweat, and tears like we're doing here, okay? And again, I want to stress again, there is an infinite room in the ecosphere for things like John is doing, well, what we're doing, okay? As you could tell, we are 3 highly paid what am I saying? We're not 3 highly paid professionals. We're simply 3 people that speak our voice who know how to do this. I've been doing this a while with these 2 gentlemen. I'm sorry, these 2 guys. And any of you can do something out there and push it out. That's really what social media and YouTube and these other things allow you to do. And if you don't want to go on camera, take the work that we do, take the work that John does, and pass it on. Kurt, it's about time for some stories of the week, and I'm not talking about what you had for dinner.
All right. Well, earlier you talked about the lawsuit and mentioned the Louisiana case, but I think it's very important to note that in the oral arguments at the Supreme Court, many observers think that the Supreme Court is going to rule in the Louisiana case that racial gerrymandering of congressional districts is unconstitutional. You say, so what? The fellow who wrote the districts for Prop 50 admitted he tried to write in Hispanic districts. So there is an admission against interest that if the Supreme Court case goes the way I think it will go, that Prop 50 will be unconstitutional by that standard. Very important.
By the way, I want to jump in on that because that's a lot of kind of our cases tied in a bit to that. One of our attorneys, Mark Moyes, who've had on our show, run an amicus brief, which is fancy word for friends of the court, I believe, Mr. Lawyer, for 2 California plaintiffs, California Policy Institute, and somebody else that joined this. This could actually rewrite many of the congressional districts that haven't even been in play all over the United States. Our case that we're doing right now may actually put a halt for the 2026 cycle, at least, of Prop 50 coming into play. Give us a few more there, Kurt.
All right. It turns out that Gavin Newsom, in addition to the questions being raised about his conduct with the Chief of Staff, Dana Williamson, Newsom has said he, quotes, hates politicians who lie. Well, he must be engaging in self-loathing then, because Newsom lies every time he opens his mouth.
He really can't help himself. He can't help himself. Period. Full stop. Just had to get that in.
By the way, let me pile on something there that I didn't get to earlier. It's a bit complex. Just for everybody knows, I won't be on next week due to a family business and the following week's Thanksgiving, but we will get to later what I'm talking about now. And Kurt and Scott, focus on this for a second. This came out today from our buddy we've had on our show before, Susan Crabtree. Dana Wilkerson originally worked for
That's Williamson, by the way.
Williamson,
Dana
whatever
Williamson.
the hell her name is. Dana, that one, worked for PG&E originally, and PG&E is where much of the corruption money comes from. And again, I opened the show with that, but be aware this, I'm going to call him person. Nobody get mad at me. I'm not mislabeling species. This person here, all right, is probably, yeah, you see the similarities, is mainly the link, probably sisters, between Gavin Newsom and PG&E going back years, allegedly, but there's a lot more to this story than is even in the press. Back to you, Kurt.
All right. There was a Turning Point USA event at UC Berkeley, and it turned violent with the Antifa thugs behaving as they usually behave. And the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. is investigating these protests. And combined with Antifa being declared a terrorist organization, it's past time to crack down. There are many commentators that think that if we allow this violence to spiral out of control, it will lead to a civil unrest or worse.
And let me add something to this story that you may have not seen on X today, that Rob Schneider, who actually did speak at that event, is suing UC Berkeley, he announced today, in addition to the Department of Justice investigating UC Berkeley. Back to you.
Well, what needs to happen is that the individuals, such as the chancellor of the University of California, all the way up to the board, the state board, need to be sued personally for conspiring to violate people's civil rights. And you say, well, Kurt, why is that important? Under the civil rights statutes.
Kurt, why is that important?
Why is civil rights statutes passed in the 1960s to protect blacks in the South. If you sue for civil rights violations, a government official, they cannot have the government pay their legal fees, and they cannot have the government pay their judgment. So it's all on them. Enormous leverage. So do they want to bet their house, or do they want to settle?
Good point. Okay, continue on there, Kurt.
All right. So California is now requiring an annual LGBTQ cultural competency test to maintain a teaching credential in California. So that means if you're a Christian teacher, you have to claim you accept things that, of course, you cannot accept because they're antithetical to biblical teaching. So there's a lawyer now who's going to represent Christian teachers, probably more than one group, who want to assert their federal right to a religious exemption, not to have to take this pro-homosexual propaganda.
And by the way, if you don't recognize that person as Scott Wiener, you haven't, that Scott Piotr. Careful with that, Scott.
Yeah, you got to be careful with our Scots here.
Right.
Yeah, but a Wiener name, how, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
All right, hopefully Mike, not. Katie Porter's running for governor.
I've heard.
And Katie Porter is even more obnoxious than the typical Democrat. I mean, earlier we had a conversation about whether Democrats are evil, and I'm going to take a dissenting view here. They're not wrong. Many of them are evil. Anyone who wants to cut off a child's genitals is evil, no question asked. Anyone that wants to tell an 8-year-old boy that he should dress like a girl and it was born a girl is evil. Anyone who wants to give 17,000 driver's licenses to illegal aliens to drive heavy commercial trucks when these people aren't even tested to read the English language is not just wrong, they're evil. So it's time for accountability, in my view, and that means we got to call evil evil when it is. But anyway, Katie Porter is one of these evil Democrats, and infamously she poured boiling potatoes over her live-in boyfriend's head. And now she was criticizing Sean Duffy, the transportation secretary, alleging that he was not restricting private planes during the Democrat shutdown in Washington, D.C. And fortunately, the Trump administration is fighting back. And Duffy said, hopefully Katie doesn't pour hot mashed potatoes on me for correcting her, but restrictions for private jets were already in place. That's the kind of fight back we need from Republicans.
100%. 100%. Kurt, got anything else there? Go ahead.
Yeah, one of my pet peeves is John Adams told us to celebrate the 4th of July with shows and games and sports and guns and bells and bonfires and fireworks. He was the second president. He was a founding father. But the mayor of Stanton, California, bragged in a recent email that they're trying to fine 18 people, collectively about $1 million, for using fireworks on the 4th of July. I don't care if he is a Republican. That ain't right. I told him so in an email, and his response was very pathetic. In fact, we ought to have him come on the show and have a shootout. But he said, well, we're going to give people a free hearing. And I explained to him that a free hearing does not meet the requirement in the 8th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution of not imposing excessive fines. I think even people who are not lawyers who are listening to this show can recognize that $1 million of fines for some fireworks on the 4th of July is more than excessive.
Here, here. They shouldn't have any fines. What are you talking about? Did they start the Palisades fire? Did they start any fires? Now, that could be something they could be fined for. But if they're using fireworks responsibly and they're celebrating for our country, screw you, Mr. Mayor of Stanton.
Well, remember, Scott, when you were on the City Council of Newport Beach, there were a lot of entrepreneurial fireworks in the city of Newport Beach. I take my boat out on the 4th of July and watch the fireworks in the harbor. And I can tell you there's plenty of private fireworks. No one cares what the law says.
Oh, we had a bunch of Karens in our neighborhood that, wanted to know why the police department wasn't out there in the neighborhoods, arresting these teenagers, these hoodlums, for setting off fireworks in the park.
Well, I guess California's DMV has now admitted that they gave illegal aliens 17,000 commercial driver's licenses.
I think they were forced to admit that.
Yeah, but I know when you're driving down the road, you see that big truck, you're thinking, I think I'm going to move over a lane because I don't know who's really driving that truck in California.
Or any other state if they're from California, by the way.
Well, in Oklahoma now they have a sting and they're pulling these people over, and they found a number of people with driver's licenses from California and other Democrat-run states.
Well,
Again, this is evil. They don't care about us.
Ron DeSantis is suing the state of California for that reason. This picture is the picture of that poor family that died because that idiot sits there and makes a U-turn in the middle of the stinking freeway.
Yeah, that's an idiot.
And
Mike,
killed this family.
Mike, there's something very important before we leave tonight that you can update all of us on, which is the initiatives that are being circulated to get qualified on the ballot or are about to be circulated. Can you please tell us what's going on there?
I'm gonna perfect way I was gonna end the show. Kurt, Scott, you guys got any more stuff here? Because I actually want to end the show on this so it sinks in. Because you gentlemen know I won't be here next week, and the following week we'll be eating turkey allegedly.
Well, about today, Ron Johnson and Rick Scott had a hearing in Los Angeles and talked to the victims of the Palisades fire. Of course, Gavin Newsom was in Brazil at the climate change conference, not here listening to the people who still can't rebuild in the Palisades after the incompetent management of Los Angeles and California led to their neighborhoods burning down.
Well, I mean, is that after they found out that they left a fire smoldering right before the Santa Ana winds kicked up in the Palisades, and they figure that is, one of the sources of the fire for the Palisades? I mean, you may as well start writing checks, Karen Bass and Governor Newsom. These guys need to be reimbursed for your incompetency.
Well, and the DEI head of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power left the reservoirs up in the hills in Palisades empty, and the reservoirs go down the hill and fill the fire hydrants.
100%.
So there was no water because of the incompetence of local leadership. Incompetence.
Absolutely. Kurt,
all DEI hires.
Great updates. Before I roll to the end, because I want to make sure people remember, thank you, the 3 initiatives. Scott, give me your closing blast.
my closing message, which I kind of hinted a little bit when we were talking to John, is the Republican Party needs to get their act together. They've been doing the same thing, like you guys have, we've talked about this before, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And they're still doing the same thing over and over again. The consultant class is getting rich, and the Republican Party is losing, losing, losing. They elect incompetent leaders like Corey Rankin. She's the current GOP chairwoman. She needs to be fired. She needs to resign, and she needs to do it now so that we still have time before the 2026 election to get out and do something else.
Well, but Scott and Mike, I got a question. How does California keep electing these incompetent people to lead the state party?
Well, tell you what, let's go to that into another show because that's a complicated issue. Okay.
Yeah,
that's a long discussion, sadly.
Okay,
so they figured out how to get themselves elected to run the party, but they haven't figured out how to get other Republicans elected statewide or
100%.
even in a district.
And what I want to stress, what my theme has been tonight, gentlemen, thank you. What I want to stress exactly what Kurt brought up, what Scott brought up, but add a layer to it. Stop waiting. Stop waiting for somebody to come to save you. You have the ability, thanks to Hiram Johnson, as mentioned by our great guest tonight, to take a lot of that power in your own hands. There are count them, 3 petitions right now. Print some out. You want to know how to get them? Go to my X feed, go to Rebuild California, go to our groups that we push the show up on. There's voter ID. There's the CEO Act, which is school choice, and there's Save Prop 13. The Howard Jarvis. You can Google them. I put them up. They're on my feed. They're in my newsletter. Any questions? I'm pretty easy to find. Save Prop 13. CEO Act. Let's do something about education by empowering parents to do something about it. And voter ID speaks for itself. Because it's up to you, Californians. Stop waiting. Thanksgiving's coming up. And although you're not supposed to talk politics, take some petitions with you. Many of you are going to take an apple pie or something that you stole from the relative's house last year. Take petitions with you. Take petitions with you for these 3 things. As you're doing that, as you're getting ready to go over this next weekend, all right? Start taking things like John's show, our show, everything else, and start pushing them out on social media. Push the links out on social media. All of these petitions are designed to print, sign, mail. You don't need to find the drug addict on the corner or in front of the Walmart like you did before. It's print, sign, mail. For everyone out there, it's a state of gold, but it's up to you to take the tarnish off the metal that we've allowed to build up in California and rub it off. Or we're going to do it with initiatives, and we're going to do it by keeping our voice loud. And it's up to you, everyone, to take back the state because it's yours. God bless you. These gentlemen will be on next week. Have a great day.
Mike, one more thing, Mike. You're going to be on the radio in the morning. Tell everybody where.
On the radio, you'll find me in the morning on 870 on the Jen Horn Show at about 7:15. Thank you very much, Kurt, for reminding me.
870 a.m. in Los Angeles.
Correct. You're going to hear me yelling at about 7:15, I believe is when they told me. Find out if I'm wrong after the show. And again, everything from the lawsuit, from the highest mountain to the smallest river, you don't have to be as loud as we are, but together, all together, our voices, we can stand up and speak and keep this indeed a state of gold. God bless you. Good night. And whatever you do 1 or 2 things every day to take this damn state back from the people that are trying to rip